Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start today's video with the story of hotel neighbors who pushed their luck. They blasted music, laughed louder when confronted, and promised things would get noisier. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Want a party in the hotel room next to me? Enjoy your wake-up call. A few years back, I was staying in a hotel out in suburban Detroit for my Navy Reserve drill weekend. Nothing fancy, just your standard business class hotel, and I was mostly looking forward to 2 quiet nights of sleep between long days. Saturday started off normal enough, but then around 9:30 p.m., the neighbors checked into the adjoining room. It was a couple, a buddy of theirs, and what looked like their 6-year-old kid. No big deal, I thought. Families stay in hotels all the time. I heard some talking through the shared door, but that's to be expected. Thin walls, standard hotel living. But around 10 p.m., a few more people showed up, and suddenly it wasn't just a family evening anymore. It was a party. At first it was tolerable, but then the music started thumping. The laughter got louder, and the voices rose to the level of a backyard barbecue. Finally, I knocked on their door. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but can you keep it down? I've got to be up early for work." The guy looked at me with this half smirk, half challenge expression and said, "We're not even being loud. How can you hear us?" I gestured toward the obvious problem. "Bro, I'm in the room right next to you. There's literally a door between our rooms. I can hear everything you say." He gave me the world's most dismissive, "Yeah, okay," and shut the door in my face. 45 minutes later, it was just as bad as before, maybe worse, since I could hear them cracking jokes about me. So I called the front desk. I heard their room phone ring, and the guy picked it up. A moment later, he hung up and announced loud enough for me to hear, "If he thinks we're loud now, wait until later." That's when the spite really kicked in. They were louder than ever, clearly doing it on purpose, laughing extra hard, turning the music up, clinking bottles. I wasn't just dealing with inconsiderate neighbors, I was dealing with jerks who wanted to make it personal. I toughed it out until about 1 a.m., tossing and turning, trying every trick in the book, pillows over my ears, white noise on my phone, before exhaustion finally won. My alarm went off at 5:30, and I rolled out of bed, groggy, but with a wicked little idea forming in my mind. See, most hotel rooms back then came with one of those classic bedside alarm clocks. This one had a radio, too. I figured if they wanted to make my night miserable, I'd make their morning hell. Before I checked out, I dragged the alarm clock across the room to the outlet right next to the adjoining door. I cranked the volume to maximum, set the dial in between stations so it was nothing but static, and positioned the speaker flush against the door. Basically like a poor man's sound cannon. Then I set the alarm for 5:35, 5 minutes after I left the room. I couldn't stop grinning as I packed up my bag. The image in my head was priceless. Them dead asleep after a long night of drinking, suddenly blasted awake by a wall of static at full volume with no way to shut it off. Since the clock was jammed right up against the locked door, they'd have to sit there helplessly while it screamed at them. The only way to silence it would be to call the front desk and admit they couldn't turn off a clock radio right after having been reported for noise complaints. I walked out the door, left my key at the desk, and headed off to drill with the most satisfying mental picture. I didn't get to see their reaction, but in my mind, I can still hear the cursing, the scrambling, the pure confusion as they realized that karma had paid them a visit, courtesy of one cheap plastic alarm clock. Stories like this almost make me wish things like this happened to me so I'd have a story to post for others' enjoyment. And our second story. Free clothing for Uncle. Running a small thrift store is usually pretty rewarding. We keep prices low, we recycle tons of clothing that would otherwise end up in landfills, and for many people in our community, it's the only place they can get decent clothes for $1 or less. Most of our stock is perfectly wearable, no big stains, no rips, and sometimes even brand new pieces with tags still attached. Fast fashion shine items, name brands with tiny defects and the like. And every once in a while, we go a step further. We host a free clothing day when everything, yes, literally everything is free. It's chaotic, exhausting, and we give away thousands of pieces of clothing. But it's also heartwarming. Families load up bags of clothes they couldn't otherwise afford, students pick out workwear for interviews, and parents get school clothes for their kids. It's always a big deal, and we advertise it well in advance so everyone has the same fair shot. The day before one of these events, though, I had an encounter that made me shake my head so hard I nearly gave myself whiplash. A group of women walked in, already brimming with entitlement. They marched straight to the racks and demanded that we give them free clothes right then and there. I calmly explained that the free event was tomorrow and that today, like always, clothes were just $1 each. Not a fortune by any means, and certainly not unreasonable given the condition of the items. But no, they insisted they couldn't come tomorrow. They needed it today. Why? Because apparently the clothes were destined for an uncle in a poor country. That was their pitch. I repeated myself, the free day's tomorrow, today it's still $1 a piece. If you want them now, you'll have to pay like everyone else. They huffed and puffed, tried to argue, then behind my back started muttering insults. I didn't hear it directly, but later other customers told me they'd been calling me a racist and even making throat-cutting gestures while glaring at me, all because I wouldn't bend the rules and give them what they wanted a day early. In the end, after all their noise, they pulled out their wallets, and they didn't just buy a couple things. They left with 72 pieces of clothing, 69 women's items, and 3 men's items. I couldn't help but think, wow, Uncle must have a very specific sense of fashion. I figured that'd be the end of it, but sure enough, the next day, there they were again, bright and early for Free Clothing Day, with bags in hand and determination written all over their faces. They scooped up more piles of women's clothing, stuffing bags full like they were contestants in a shopping spree game show. Meanwhile, other customers, families, kids, actual people in need, were carefully choosing what they needed most: a coat for winter, uniforms for school, baby clothes. But these women, they weren't there out of necessity. They were stockpiling, using entitlement and guilt-tripping as their tools. It wasn't illegal, of course. Free Clothing Day means free clothing for everyone, no strings attached. But I couldn't shake the bitter taste. They'd already bought a mountain of items at rock-bottom prices the day before, all while insulting me and making nasty gestures, and still came back for more the moment it was free. That's the thing about running a thrift store. You see the best and the worst of people. For every grateful family or student who walks out the door smiling with clothes they desperately needed, there's always someone else trying to game the system. Hey, at least I know this much. Whatever stunt they tried to pull, I didn't cave. The rules were the same for them as for everyone else. Free meant free on the designated day, not whenever they snapped their fingers. And for me, standing firm on that boundary was worth more than any dollar or any insult they could throw my way. Super kind of your organization. Of course, but please tell me there are some kind of rules or guidelines in place? I could just imagine a handful of people walking out with 90% of the items while the rest are feeling glad they got one thing each. And our last story. Karen tries to fire me from my own family's business. I'm an 18-year-old guy, and my parents own a small place we'll call Joe's. It's been around for years, named after my grandparents. We sell snacks, cakes, candies, and fast food. It's the kind of place that regulars love, and I often hang out there with friends when I have free time. I pay for my food, and so do they, which my dad appreciates. On weekends, when the place gets hectic, I jump in to help serve and take orders. My dad lets me keep the tips, plus he pays me for the hours I work. Not many people know I'm the owner's son. Even fewer realize that my parents, the actual owners, work in the restaurant themselves. They've always been hands-on, but a lot of customers assume they're just employees. It was a busy Saturday. A woman walked in with a boy who looked about 12 or 13. Within minutes, I could tell exactly what kind of customer she was. The boy started tearing around the dining room, screaming, bumping into chairs, stepping on people's feet, and worst of all, sticking his hands in other customers' food. His mother sat at the table, glued to her phone, completely unbothered. I'd had enough. When the kid barreled past me, I grabbed his arm, leaned down, and said firmly, "Hey, no more running. People are trying to eat." He froze, then burst into tears and sprinted back to his mother. Seconds later, she stormed over to me, face red, heels clacking like gunshots. "Karen, how dare you touch my child?" Me. He was disrupting everyone. Didn't you see him sticking his hands in other people's food? Karen, he's just a child. He can do whatever he wants. Me, not under my supervision. That's when she dropped the line every service worker dreads. Karen, do you even know who I am? I thought, oh, great, here it comes. Me, no, ma'am, I don't. Karen, I'm the wife of the owner. That boy you manhandled, that's his son. And you're done. Fired. I almost burst out laughing, but instead I decided to play along. Me, wait, what? You're the owner's wife? Karen, that's right. His name is Dad's name, and you'll regret laying a finger on his son. This actually threw me for a second. Hardly anyone knows my dad's name unless they've been coming to the restaurant for years. Me, please don't get me fired. This is the only job I have. Karen, you should have thought of that before harassing my child. She marched up to the register and demanded to see the manager. My dad walked out. Karen, your employee assaulted my son. I want him fired immediately. Dad, I'm sorry for any inconvenience, but I can't fire someone without a reason. Karen, do you even know who you're talking to? I'm your boss's wife. And if you don't do as I say, you'll regret it. My dad started grinning. She noticed. Karen, why are you laughing? Dad, ma'am, are you sure you want to make that claim? Karen whipped out her phone. She said she was calling her husband to complain about the rude manager and the worthless waiter. She dialed the number plastered on the board outside, the one we use for deliveries and takeout. My dad's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, answered it, and said, Dad, hello, this is Dad's name, owner of Joe's. How can I help you? The blood drained from Karen's face so fast, I swear she turned from beet red to chalk white in an instant. Dad, yes, I'm the owner. And no, you're not my wife. Also, the employee you're demanding I fire is my son. I couldn't hold back my laughter anymore. The entire dining room was watching, a few regulars even chuckling. Karen sputtered, grabbed her still crying kid by the arm, and stormed out. She didn't even take the food she ordered. Karen never came back, probably too embarrassed to show her face after being caught lying so boldly. The best part was watching her arrogance collapse in seconds when she finally realized she tried to fake her way into authority in front of the actual owner and his son. She picked the wrong place, the wrong employee, and definitely the wrong husband. The way she confidently dropped your dad's name thinking it would intimidate you only made her downfall better. That detail alone makes me think she'd been plotting this kind of con for a while, maybe thinking she'd score free food or scare staff into silence. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.